So it's been very interesting this last week, as I was getting the podcast ready and getting some things together to move forward before 2024. I I participated in this very important conversation about grief last week with the Super Club, and I have received so many DMs and um, LinkedIn messages from people who have said that they were so moved or they were so grateful that I brought that conversation or that we had that conversation in a professional networking environment because so many people are impacted by grief. And it made me feel like I wasn't finished talking about it. I have to admit, I would talk about, in particular, the grief around my mother. I would talk about it every day if I could, because I really actually quite enjoy talking about my mother and our relationship. And um, I don't do it, obviously, because it's too much and it's not necessary. But also, I think because it makes people feel uncomfortable when you talk about death. And I learned a lot from the death of my mother. I'm in the process of learning a lot. I have been volunteering in hospitals and being around people who were in the end of their life since I was quite young. So I started volunteering at 13 at Toronto Western. My mom was a nurse there, and it was it was just something I felt comfortable with people who were vulnerable, and that's always been something that I thought I could handle. And then, of course, along the way, as you get older, different people in your family, in your life die. And I've had some very, very profound losses. But the thing I learned in my mother's death, though, I'd never had a loss like that. And of course, you say, well, obviously, it's your mother. True. But there was something about what happened with the shocking way she died and how stunningly quickly it was. It wasn't just that I was not prepared. The closeness that we experienced made me feel like I had lost a physical part of myself, and I had a physical reaction to her death that I had never imagined. It changed how I ate. It changed how I felt. I um, it I kept dreaming, in the first weeks after she passed. I kept having these really vivid dreams about her. And I remember one of them, my mom, like all of her siblings, are incredible cooks and chefs. She could cook anything. But my mother used to make roti. My family's from Guyana, and roti is a very common traditional dish that you have with curries and stews. And I had this dream where it was just my mother's hands and my hands kneading the flour and then rolling out the dough. And it was it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary for how real it was. And all these dreams were like all these dimensions of experiences we had had, and they felt real and unreal. They were surreal. And so the grief with her passing for me broke open this part of me that I didn't even know was there. And there was a cascade of things that happened after my mom's passing, in terms of my business, in terms of a health event I had where I ended up having to have a surgery to remove a growth on one of my kidneys, and it was very surprising. And I entered this new spiritual realm, this new space of growth that, of course, was no longer personal. It was holistic. It affected every part of my life. And one of the things, and I just smile, is that I gained quite a lot of weight during that time. And I sometimes would laugh because I would say, to my husband, if my mother was here, I wouldn't have gained all this weight, because she would be, as lovely as she was, she would also be pretty critical, and she'd say, in her way of saying, she would say, Bumsy getting big, Bubsy getting big, for my non-West Indian friends. Um, Bubsy is, your boobs, and Bumsy is your buttocks. And it's one of the fun things of Caribbean, culture, is people always making words out of other words and making things up. Um, but I think when she did that, it kind of kept me in check. And when she disappeared with the wind, um, so many things went with her. And the thing I liked about my mother, and we don't talk a lot about this, with especially with our portrayal of Black women, is my mother was so loving. She was an extremely loving and friendly person. And I miss that so much. I miss that she could forgive on the drop of a hat, and that she can hug you and hold you and touch you in such an authentic and non-judgmental way. She was judgmental about other things, but love and friendliness and hugging, it was medicine. And you don't know its value truly until it is gone. And so I have been in this process of learning to live without that. And I am extraordinarily grateful to have known such a human being, to have not just been her daughter, but to have witnessed a person who loved so hard and tried so hard and forgave so easily, and built so many connections around the world, and friendships. She left a village of people around us. And I just feel like she was one of the many people during the pandemic who disappeared, and we never got to say a full, proper farewell. But I am well served, and I think my siblings are well served, and our kids are well served by the way she truly loved us, and the way she showed that love and friendship and friendliness was an action, was an action. So I've kind of gone off on a tangent, but and I will again, but I feel very compelled to talk about that part of my mom today. And I feel very grateful that super club said to myself and a few other people, would you talk about your experience of grief and hold space for others? And I think in our stoicness, in our tight upper lipness, and our belief that the work environment or the professional environment is not where you talk about, deeply emotional things, I think we harm ourselves, we harm each other. I think the way we heal, the way we learn to connect and feel one another, is finding ways to tell our truths and to care for those truths. I call them these quiet sufferings. So, I liked her very much. She was more than my mother. She was a spiritual guide. She was a friend. She was a sister. She was just a really heroic human being. And I'd rather have her back. But what I've learned from her being gone has expanded who I am and what I am and the way I will and do move forward in the world. So, Bumsy getting big, Bubsy getting big. Yeah, that's what she would have said.